What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's daily market recap. In today's episode, I'm going to break down all my trades from the morning. Now, the stock I traded today, the one that I made the most on, was actually on my watch list on Sunday evening. So when I uploaded my weekly game plan and the watch list for Monday morning on Sunday, I had a scan of recent reverse split stocks. And one of the stocks on that scan was CERO. And I said, this is a stock that's a recent reverse split, pharmaceutical company, very likely that we're going to see them put out news. It's got a low float, so be on watch. If we have a day where news comes out, this thing could squeeze. And guess what happened? Today, news came out and it squeezed. It's currently up 171%. I'm up $61,477.52 on the day, with 44,000 of that coming from CERO. This was the stock where I initially I liked it, but I had to be a little bit conservative on share size because it started to squeeze on relatively light volume, but it held up and continued giving opportunities. Now, there are a couple other stocks I traded today, a few energy names. So Houston American Energy right here. This one's making another push towards the high. So going a little bit further without me. That's good to see. RBNE, we call this a dead cat bounce off the low. And there was a little bit of volatility on that one. And anyways, let's go back to the beginning of the day. So first trade of the day, CERO. Okay, and this one is just continuing to move higher. However, at this point, it's kind of grinding. Volume is declining a little bit. Price is getting higher. Spreads are getting bigger. And even right here, as it potentially makes a new high, it feels like it's difficult to manage risk. So coming up to 1665, 1670, does it break 20? It breaks the new high by a few cents and then sort of is sideways here. Now, the problem is if you're in this high, all of a sudden you're like, uh-oh, I just bought for the high day break. Or if you got in down low, you're probably taking profit because look how fast that just drops back to 19, right? So that's the challenge based on this price range and just sort of the way this one's moving. But in any case, first trades on it were early this morning. Now, it actually had news that came out. It popped up after hours right here, dipped down, popped up again, dipped down. And then this morning, right here, it pops up, and I jumped in the middle of this squeeze here and was able to break the ice with my first trades. Let's get on a 10-second chart so you can see that setup in a little bit more detail. So I'm a big fan of trading micro pullbacks, which means I like to see a stock pop up, pull back, buy the dip for the next leg higher, buy the dip for the next leg higher. And so there are actually multiple opportunities on this. Now, I trade micro pullbacks generally until I lose. And then when I have one I lose on, then I say, all right, time to take my sort of foot off the gas and slow down. So I let it pull back, it kind of comes back down, goes sideways, and really isn't very tradable until the opening bell. And then it was at the open. And what's interesting is before the open, I drew this I drew this flat bottom at 1042. And I almost took a dip right here, but I was like, nah, it's a little risky. It's below VWAP. I don't know if I should do that. So I ended up not taking that trade, and it ended up going. And so then I got in the middle of the move higher and just rode the momentum. See, the thing is, I don't really mind if that happens because I can always get in on any of these micro pullbacks once it starts pulling away. I could trade it right here if I wanted to. The biggest thing holding me back at this point is that, unfortunately, you've got bigger spreads with lighter volume, and that creates more risk. What's interesting with this one is that the halt levels have been kind of slowing it down because this is a stock that the previous day was above $3 a share, which means the halt bands are every 10%. Now, if a stock was below 3, it would be every 20%, which could give us some really big range before we run into a halt. But it's every 10%. So we keep running into these halt levels. So like right here, it's going into a halt level. And of course, the challenge with this is it's already pretty extended. And then all of a sudden it's in a halt. And you just didn't have a lot of time to build a big cushion like from this micro pullback before you're potentially stuck holding during a halt, which unfortunately, at this price range, that creates a lot of risk. So on the one hand, I love seeing that this is pulling away. On the other hand, I probably would have done a lot better if this move happened during the pre-market session where we didn't have circuit breaker halts. because each time it popped up, we were running into halt levels and it dips down, running into a halt level and it dips down, running into a halt level, it dips down. And this is the first time we've actually gotten a halt since way back here at 946. So, you know, of course, it's the luck of the draw that I stopped trading it right here and then finally it halts up. But, you know, this is just the way the cookie crumbles. And yesterday was a good example of easy come, easy go. And even today, you know, it would be very easy on this stock to jump in for something like the break of 20. And I had a couple close calls on it. So, you know, well, this one right here, that one right there where I jumped in and all of a sudden it fails to break 20 and it drops down $2, nearly $2 a share. You know, I mean, that's a close call. I fortunately was able to get out for just a small loss, but my biggest loss today was about $6,000 off the top. And it was on this one. So, you know, I just, at a certain point, you got to know when to call it quits and not overstay your welcome and recognize that I'm taking more risk than what I stand to gain, which gives me an inverted profit to loss ratio, or at least an inverted risk to reward ratio. So, you know, I don't want to take $15,000 of risk to make only $3,000 or $4,000. You know, you do that 3 times in a row, you have a couple winners, great, you make $9,000, then finally you lose, and then you're red on, you know, even though you have 4 trades and 75% accuracy, you're red because your losers are so much bigger than your winners. And, you know, it's not worth it. So CERO had a news catalyst. It's a recent reverse split. But what do we know about these stocks? Typically, you get a recent reverse split, you get news that comes out, you get a big squeeze. And then what happens? Do they keep going higher? Do they go up to $50, $100, $200 a share, $1,000 a share? No. They go up a bit, and then usually the company does a secondary offering, and they sell more shares onto the open market to raise money. So we can go into the SEC filings on this stock, CERO, and we can actually check to see if they have a active shelf registration. And then we can also see, so right here, June 16th, they filed a prospectus. So this is related to the sale of 2.1 million shares. So amends and supplements the prospectus dated May 23rd. So it's a registration S1 here to sell additional shares. And so they filed this just yesterday. They are absolutely ready to sell. Emerging growth company, you know, they'll probably say in, let's see, where is it? Usually they'll say something about some of the risks related to the company. So notice of delisting or failure satisfied continue listing rule, right? So that's obviously a potential problem. In any case, this is a company that is very likely to raise money by selling shares. And so the question now is, when does that happen? How much cash do they have on hand? So this is as of March 31st. They had 7.9 million, and five of it was cash, and then some of this was operating lease. You know, I don't know how tangible, but anyways, so it's $5 million cash, let's just say. So then what are their operating expenses? So here you could see that net loss was $5.4 million. For the 3 months that ended March 31st. So they spent $5 million in 3 months. So now here we are. So April, May, June. So by the end of June, based on spending $5.4 million every 3 months, how much of this do they have left? Well, it seems like it might not be a lot. Now, it's always possible they spent more in Q1 and they spend less in Q2, But nonetheless, this looks like the type of company that's going to raise money. So if you're a short seller, you may look at this and think, I'm just going to start shorting it. I'm going to keep adding because this stock is probably going to do a secondary offering. Might even happen today, but probably not. But within the next few days. And when that happens, it could easily drop all the way back down. Case in point, RBNE. So RBNE, this stock squeezes up, as you may recall, makes a huge move, and then this big drop, secondary offering, right? So they sold 5 million shares on the market in the secondary offering. That increased their float from 1 million to 6 million. Now, of course, and I'm going to get a little annoyed here on this. I can't help but get a little annoyed that it's, of course, this was literally where I stopped trading, and I'm like, I'm going to throw in the towel, and now it's almost halting up a second time. But nonetheless, sometimes they go without you, and this is going to be one of those cases. I cannot get in up here because that would just be, I can't. You can't miss a huge move like this, the best move of the day, and then get in at the very top. That's just crazy. You just have to accept you missed it. And know that there's always another stock around the corner. So if I miss this one, there'll always be another one tomorrow, the next day, whatever. And now you've got a little topping tail forming. You still have about a minute left on this 1 minute candle, so it's, to be determined. The 5 minute profile is still showing declining volume, but the 1 minute did at least pick up on that candle. All right, so nonetheless, you can understand why some short sellers are going to have a short bias on this. But on the other hand, at what point do they say, gosh, I started shorting it at $12 a share, or maybe at 16 for the double top. And then it went to 19 and I added more. And then it went to 20 and now 22 and 24. And what happens if it does, a RBNE kind of move? How high did RBNE go? Now I can't remember. Well, RBNE topped out at about $20 a share. All right. So what if it does an RGC kind of move? Who knows, right? It's not, I can't imagine. But I'm just saying, for instance, then all of a sudden you're really in a jam. So for me, I just manage my risk. I buy dips, I trade to the long side, I set my stops, and when I stop adding considerable amounts of profit, I call it a day. And today I peaked at about 62,000, and then I gave back $6,000 off the top, went down to 55,000, and then I rallied back up to 62 and then gave back 1,000. And so I figured, seems like the last hour has been kind of a grind. Getting in, getting out, getting in, getting out, churning shares, fees and commissions, probably not worth it anymore. And part of that's because of the halt levels. Part of it's because we now have market orders during regular trading hours. So the spreads and the whips start to get bigger, which means the liquidity is actually getting worse, which is unfortunate. So my window for big profitability has come to a close for today, but I do have something exciting to show you. So at $61,000 here on the day, at 3.3 million on the month, but that didn't include today. So it'll be nearly 3.4 million. And let's pull up the calendar and look at the month of June. So for June, I am now sitting 855,000 on the month before today. So now plus 61,000, over $900,000 on the month. 90% of the way towards my $1 million goal. And we still have, a little less than 2 weeks left. So I'm feeling pretty good about where I sit on the month. I would love a couple more $200,000 days. And, it could easily happen. We're in such a strong market. We keep seeing stocks making these kind of moves. And although, some of them are going to be easier to trade than others, this one happened to be a little bit more difficult. We get one with the right kind of combination of news and float and daily chart. This is going to be a really solid month. It could end up being the best month of the year. So right now, the window's open. It's time to be aggressive, and I'm showing up every morning ready to trade at my best. All right, so I'll be back at it first thing tomorrow morning. Those of you guys who haven't already done a 2-week trial here at Warrior Trading, make sure you check it out. I'll put the link in the description and pin it at the top of comments, and also put links to a couple recent uploads right here. But let me remind you, as always, that trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so please manage your risk and always practice in a simulator before putting real money on the line. All right, I'll see you guys back at it first thing tomorrow morning.